Well, hi friends, it's John Rustin and Jerry Royal, and this is our first NC Family Weekly Update video for 2025, so Happy New Year to all of you. Jerry, the last week has certainly gone by in a blur. It seems we always kind of seem to say that, but it really has. As I think about it, it seems like Christmas was really months ago now, although it was just a few weeks. But we are still celebrating Jesus and are so grateful for his immeasurable love and grace and mercy and truth, which we got to really focus on during this past Christmas season, and we're just so grateful for that.
Exactly, and I keep trying to remind myself that that's what I need to do every day, but it is good that we have that special time of the year where we are reminded in a significant way, again, of what we need to remind ourselves of and be thankful for each and every day.
Amen. Amen. I couldn't agree more. Well, Jerry, gosh, a lot has happened in the last week or so. On New Year's Day, Josh Stein was sworn in as North Carolina's 76th governor. And this past Wednesday, the North Carolina General Assembly met and held a quote-unquote organizational session where the 50 members of the state Senate and the 120 members of the state House took their oaths of office. They also elected their leaders, the President Pro Tem of the Senate, the Speaker of the House, and other positions in those chambers. And they adopted at least temporary rules to kind of govern how they operate, as well as a number of other ceremonial things. Jerry, we had, you and Sharon and Mitch and I were down at the General Assembly, our government relations team, just meeting, talking with legislators and catching up and just watching what was going on. You were there. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, a lot of it is, it's people celebrating together. There were 29 new members of the 170 people were there with their families. And it was just a time to greet, to renew friendships, not a time as far as talking about policy, with the exception of the comments that were made in the House and Senate when Senator Berger, after he was elected, and then Representative Hall after he was elected Speaker. But overall, it really was just a time of celebration, the beginning of a new session.
Yes, the calm before the storm.
Hopefully, no bad storms.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. But as you alluded to, Jerry, Senator Phil Berger from Rockingham County, Republican, was elected to his 8th term as the President Pro Tem of the Senate, which is the leadership position in the Senate. And Senator Berger enjoys, once again, a veto-proof supermajority in the Senate by a slim margin, but Republicans hold enough seats in the Senate to give them the veto-proof supermajority there. Destin Hall from Caldwell County, a Republican, was elected to his 1st term as Speaker of the North Carolina House of Representatives. Of course, our former Speaker, Tim Moore, is now representing North Carolina in Congress as one of the 14 members of our congressional delegation in the U.S. House. So he has progressed, if you want to call that. Most people would consider that progress, but in his absence, it opened the opportunity for another Speaker of the House to step in, and Destin Hall has been serving in the General Assembly for a number of terms, most recently as the Rules Chairman. A very prominent position in the House, and so he comes in to the position of Speaker with a lot of expertise and a lot of relationships, not only within the House chamber, but also working as the House and Senate, have to work to iron out differences that they may have in various bills and that sort of thing.
And so, as you say, John, that was a significant change with Tim Moore as the longest serving Speaker in North Carolina history.
Yep.
But because Destin Hall had been Rules Chairman, he's been very much a part of the leadership in recent years in the House. And overall, the leadership in the House and the Senate, with people who've been appointed, elected to various roles, a lot of the same people are going to be in leadership. So a lot of the dynamics are going to be the same. As I mentioned, there are some new members. Hopefully, as you say, John, there won't be storms that, with the changes that have occurred, that they'll be able to navigate the challenges in a way that avoids those.
Well, one of the things that's the same but is different
Right.
is that Destin Hall, the Speaker of the House, will be presiding over a chamber that is 1 seat shy of a veto-proof supermajority. So while they enjoy the supermajority in the state Senate. They're one seat shy of the supermajority, and the ability, as the Republican caucus votes together as a bloc, to override the governor's veto. So that's going to make things very interesting. We saw that at the beginning of the 2023 legislative session, and without the veto-proof supermajority, again, in the House, they were one seat short. At that time, they were not able to override Governor Roy Cooper's vetoes. But then Tricia Cotham, a House member from Mecklenburg County, switched parties from Democrat to Republican. Republicans got a supermajority, and they were able to override every single one of Governor Cooper's vetoes after that time. So the vote count is really important. Of course, there are other ways to override a veto. There may be members who don't show up to vote, that sort of thing, that changes the percentages and so forth, or not the percentage, but the numerical requirements to override. So it's going to be a really interesting session. And of course, Josh Stein is a Democrat, so the executive branch is Democrat-led, legislative branch is Republican-led. They come in with very different priorities on a lot of issues, and so it is going to be very interesting to see how things develop and progress as we enter into the session. The legislature is scheduled to come back into session to really start the session in earnest on January the 29th. So they're taking a few weeks off after this organizational session before they really get underway.
Two other things just to mention, John. I know, like you say, in the House, as far as the actual vote, the Democrats and Republicans, over the last 2 years, there are at least 4 Democrats who in some situations have voted with the Republicans. So that's a dynamic that's there with the House. These are people who had served in the past who are back this year. Another dynamic that won't affect the vote actually in chambers is now as far as who is presiding over the Senate. With Lieutenant Governor Rachel Hunt. I think it's back in 1988 when a Republican was elected Lieutenant Governor for the first time in a long time. It went from being one of the most powerful positions in the state to basically their role during the legislative session is to preside over the session. They only vote when there's a tie vote. All the appointed powers they used to have as far as committee chairs and things, that all is now with Senator Berger. But it is going to be interesting to see how that may impact things with Lieutenant Governor Hunt presiding over the Senate.
So a Democrat Lieutenant Governor presiding over Republican legislature with a veto-proof supermajority. So yeah, definitely it's going to be very interesting, as you say, Jerry, to see how that develops. So and we will be there, absolutely. Looking ahead at the legislative session, I know one of the big priorities that both Senator Berger and Representative Hall, Speaker Hall spoke about in their remarks was just the focus on Western North Carolina and continuing to provide aid to address the disaster that still exists in Western North Carolina and start or continue the rebuilding process and all of that. So that's going to be a major focus. We fully expect, unfortunately, that we're going to see efforts to expand predatory gambling in North Carolina, efforts to legalize marijuana, but there will also be some really positive initiatives, things that we'll be championing down at the General Assembly. So stay tuned for more information and details about those things as the session draws closer. Every session is different. Every session is interesting, but we, by God's grace, for the last 30 plus years, NC Family has had an opportunity and the privilege of being at the General Assembly to be a voice for biblical values, for God's truth in the policy arena. And so we feel very fortunate to have that opportunity again this year. And a lot of that is made possible by your support and your prayers and your involvement. So thank you for that.
You mentioned, John, biblical perspective. One of the wonderful highlights of the day yesterday, Capitol Commission with their State Minister Burt Jones, they were going to have a chapel service at 11 o'clock. Well, the House and the Senate had caucus meetings one of them was going to conflict. So he had 2 separate chapel services, one for the Senate members, one for the House. A large number, they anticipated would be a large turnout. It was, instead of in the chapel, they had it in the auditorium. And so it was wonderful. It was a big turnout, and it was also wonderful to hear what Burt Jones shared, because having served as a member for many years, he could speak to them because he's been in their shoes, and he reminded them the most important thing for them to focus on was the Lord. That there's going to be a whole lot of things trying to get their attention, and they're important things that are going to be in front of them. So he said every day the priority needs to be to focus on the Lord for the wisdom and the strength to do what you need to do, to understand, to know what you need to know, to make these important decisions. And Bert, in his wonderful, humble way, challenged and encouraged the members of the House and the Senate who came to hear that message. So I thought that was a wonderful way that God helped start this new session.
Yeah. Bert is a great man, and with a very important ministry, Capital Commission, that seeks to really speak to the spiritual well-being of our elected officials, of staff, of lobbyists down at the General Assembly. So a very valued ministry partner with the Family Policy Council. So of course, Jerry, in other news this week and in the past couple weeks, of course, former President Jimmy Carter passed away on December the 29th at the age of 100. And service honoring him was held in Washington, D.C. on Thursday. We certainly continue to pray for President Carter's family during this time of loss and grief. And really just want to reach out with prayers for anyone who lost loved ones over Christmas and New Year's. It is just such a tough time to experience a loss of a beloved family member and friend. And so, we do keep folks in our thoughts and prayers who lost loved ones during that time.
And that's what we were saying at the very beginning. That's what, with Christmas and all the wonderful celebration, it is just a reminder when you see through the challenging times as well as the times that aren't as challenging. And here it is a challenging time for a lot of people because of the loss that happens during this time of the year.
Well, it does help us to keep things into perspective as we talk about a lot of the things that we talk about, which are very important. But yeah, it does help to kind of bring things back into focus a bit. Also looking ahead toward other presidential news, other national news. Of course, President Donald Trump will be inaugurated to his second term as United States President on January the 20th. And it's going to be fascinating and a fascinating time as he continues to assemble his cabinet and gets underway again with his second term in office. The administration of his first presidency was remarkable and with a lot of the things that they did, especially as it relates to sanctity of life, religious liberty, parental rights, human dignity issues. And so we are very interested to see how things which are already developing, but how things both on the national and international front are going to continue to develop in the coming days and weeks and months.
All right. So let's just sharing that, John, all of us join together praying for this time of transition for our state and for our nation.
Absolutely.
That people will look to God to be the one who guides and directs, and knowing that He's there, wanting us to look to Him and trust in Him and depend on Him.
And also our prayers go out to all of you. We are expected to get some inclement weather, some very, very cold weather over this coming weekend. And so just, prayers for everyone to stay safe, to stay warm. If you encounter individuals who, need a coat or something like that, please reach out to them, show the love of Christ to them, and in very practical ways. There are a lot of needy and hurting people out there, and we have the opportunity very often to speak into their lives and also to provide practical ways to assist them. So look for opportunities to do that, especially as we enter into this very cold period of time. So friends, I think that's about it. Jerry, do you have anything else?
I think that's
Okay. Well, thank you again. Happy New Year. Happy 2025. We look forward to coming to you in the weeks ahead with reports. Again, the General Assembly is set to reconvene on January the 29th. And so we'll be doing regular reports during the legislative session to keep you up to date with what's going on, to let you know when it's most important for you to reach out and contact your lawmakers about important initiatives and legislation that's happening at the General Assembly. and other matters of particular note in the state and across our nation. So with that, friends, thank you as always for your continued support and your prayers. God bless you, and we will look forward to seeing you next week.